Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classrooms every day for one reason. They love it. The gold standard teaching and learning solution, IXL provides thousands of instructional resources, actionable analytics, and assessments to increase teacher capacity and effectiveness. IXL takes the guesswork out of lesson planning with ready made plans. Built in engagement tools such as customizable competitions make learning fun for students. Dr. Trujillo, superintendent at Tuscan Unified School District, says this about IXL, quote, "For the teacher, IXL opens up the door to be a lot more effective and provide more differentiated instruction to the different subgroups of students in their class." End quote. Empower your teachers with the tools and insights they need to enhance instruction, all in one single, easy to use platform. Get started today at ixl.com.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Welcome back, Principal Matters podcast listeners. This is Dr. Jen Schwanke, and I'm here with my sidekick, William D. Parker. Hi, how are
Hey,
ooh,
guess
I
what, Jen?
stumbled over words.
Guess what? This recording is going to be coming out the day after my birthday. And
Ah,
it's also going to be coming out right after an opportunity I had to speak at the National SAMS Conference in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with my great friend Mark Schellinger and wonderful leaders from across the U.S. So just a shout out to all my buddies down there. And I'm hoping by the time this recording comes out that I've arrived safely home and am a year older. So thanks for jumping
oh,
into today's recording, Jen.
happy birthday. January 18th is William D. Parker's birthday. So I hope you had a great day as we
Yeah.
look backwards to a day that hasn't happened yet. So listen, this is what we're going to talk about today. Everybody struggles. Every principal struggles with PD in the sense of, how can it be relevant? How can it be something that my teachers appreciate?
Yeah.
And I think this is an important time to talk about it because we have just begun the second semester. And there's this massive catch-22 with PD, and that is the principal feels perhaps like the staff needs a particular PD,
Mhm.
and the staff says the famous words, just let me go to my room, close my door, and teach.
Yep.
And so, here's the question on the table for Monday Matters today. How can a principal reconcile these two perspectives?
Mhm.
So, what do you think?
Well, this question came up in a coaching session I did last semester, and it's not the first time. I've had this conversation with other principals too, which is okay, I'm looking at my calendar. I see we've got a day scheduled for PD. I have been allotted a certain amount of time because the district has its initiatives. I have things that I think are priorities. My teachers have things they think are how can we make the most use of this time? And there's this I think the first thing I just want to say, Jen, is one day of PD provides an opportunity, but it also is impossible in one day to do the things that you would want to do that hit all the priorities that you believe are so important for a year. So I would first say just take a step back and ask yourself the more important question: what am I doing throughout the entire year that's touching on the priorities that we believe are the most important for us to be with each other, collaborating, touching base regularly, visiting with each other? Am I scheduling time on my calendar already for time with teachers, time with leaders, time with students, time with community members? Because it's going to be those ongoing conversations where the relationships are really built and where the application really happens. So having said that, if you have this narrow window, this one day of PD, or you what, and it may not be the same for everyone, but I would say, um, whatever constraints you have in front of you, you the most important question to me is, and especially if I'm just not going to tell people to go to their rooms and just close the door, because some principals do that. Some principals don't have that kind of autonomy to just say everybody goes to
Mhm.
your room, because the district may have said, this is how much time you're being allotted, or these are some priority, or we're sending people. And so whatever your context is, here's the question that always has to drive me, Jen. What would I want it to be like if I'm on the other side of it? What would I want it to be like? So if I'm going to be designing it, what would I want to be if I was on the other side of what I just designed? And I think that has to be the most important, essential question you're asking yourself before you take that step of planning. Other thoughts?
Right, right. And I do wanna sit a little bit with that, let me just go to my room and teach, let me just go, all I need is time alone in my room. And there's certainly some truth in that. And many districts have built-in work days or work time or reading days or grading days for teachers, and that's what that time is. I got to a point where I was very honest with my staff and I said, "Listen, here's the analogy. I want to go sit on my couch and watch a movie. I need to do the dishes, clean the floor, pack the lunches, and walk the dog. Once I do that, my time on the couch will be much sweeter,"
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And so, what we want to do, of course, teachers, we want to go in our rooms, but this is something that there are things we have to do to clean house, so to speak, and to be ready. And so, there would be times I'd say to my staff, "Listen, this is the job, right? This is
Mhm.
what we're paid to do. And so I get that you don't all love this, but let's just get through this together." And so kind of naming that elephant in the room helped in my eyes. Um, the other thing too is I think we lose a lot of credibility as leaders if in September we roll out our PD plan for the year and we have, whatever it is, some coaching sessions, some pull out time, some you know, sit and get whatever. And then by January, February, we lose steam and we don't do it anymore because we don't want to push the teachers anymore. They're saying they just want to go into their rooms and be left alone. And so we're like, okay, fine. Maybe I'll circle around it next year and have a stronger plan. I think that's a big mistake. I think we have to stick with it. The expectations that matter in October need to be the exact same expectations that matter in March and April. And,
Yes.
to again articulate that is the best form of honesty because we can say, listen, this is what we said we were doing back in September. Now we're just doing it.
Well, let me say these things too. If you're listening to this, some of you have already had some kind of PD. Some of you may be getting geared up for it. And so it's so hard to say these things succinctly, Jen. So let me just say what I'm thinking. One, um, your version of reality and PD dynamics is your version of reality. But one of the mistakes we often make is comparing ourselves to someone else's version of reality. So I
Mhm.
just want to say it out loud because you and I work with leaders in rural settings and urban settings, suburban settings, international settings, small settings, big settings. And guess what? They're all different and they all have some similarities. And so yours is going to be uniquely yours. And so just own it that you can't be exactly like whoever is listening down the street from you or across the town or across the country. It's got to fit you and your people in your place. The second thing I'll say is it's always more meaningful when you design PD with others. So if you think you just have to master it all yourself, figure it all out, make it beautiful and incredible just in your own head and with your own thinking, you're missing out on such a great opportunity because the people who are going to be receiving this have voice and expertise and insights and intelligence and gifts. And so just as an example that the principal whom I was working with last semester had been thinking about this months in advance, so we'd started talking about this a couple of months before the PD, and she began to specifically bring this conversation to her teams, to her teacher leaders, and to some of her other admin friends. And so she was already collecting their input and their feedback in advance so she could, they were drafting what their PD was looking like, because it wasn't just being, some of it was being prescribed, but some of it was being, they were asked to design. She was getting the input from the people who were going to be participating in it in advance so that there was shared ownership and shared creation too. And I know sometimes it feels like as leaders, oh, I just don't want to burden anybody else with this fill in the blank planning or designing. But if the goal is to create something that they're going to enjoy being a part of, then part of the solution should be in inviting their voice.
Well, yeah, and I think doing it alone to try to protect other people um does the opposite, right? It makes people think that they're just having to do this learning because someone told them to. They don't have that buy-in. By the time this airs, I will have just returned from Long Island, actually, New York. I'm going to work with a bunch of high school principals to kind of help wrap their minds around they're having some fundamental changes in their graduation requirements. And I'm going to tell you how I'm going to lead this. I'm going to open it up with the amazing story about stone soup. And if you remember this from a child, there's different versions, but someone comes to town and everyone's starving. They've got nothing. They have no food, and they're all kind of hoarding and hanging on to the one thing they have. And this peddler says, "Well, I'm going to make some soup out of a stone." And people don't really believe this, but he's starting to boil the stone. And then somebody's like, "Fine, I'll give you my carrot." And then somebody else is like, "Well, I've got a half an onion, and I've got, all right, well, I just butchered a cow. I've got some sausage." And all of a sudden, there's this incredible cauldron of delicious soup. It's the exact same thing with PD and with a complex problem like we're going to try and solve in New York. Nobody can do that alone. You've got to have the expertise, the carrots, the celery, the onions from other people who can all bring it to make this incredibly rich and really rewarding experience.
No, that's such a powerful analogy, Jen. And, you know, what I don't wanna do is, in this conversation to assume whatever solution
Mhm.
you and I are providing is gonna make it easier,
That's
because
right.
it's still gonna be hard. It's still gonna be a challenge. There's still gonna be people that are gonna benefit from it and people that aren't. And at the end of the day, when you show up, let me just give some really practical things. If I'm gonna be doing PD with a room just like you're getting ready to do with that team too, I wanna make sure that I provide an agenda in advance that shows what the learning objectives are so that people know what to prepare for. I wanna give them something in advance where they can be taking notes or have resources or something tangible to hold on to. I wanna design the room like a classroom so that if it's a large faculty or small, I can still give opportunities for elbow talk or table talk or maybe shared galleries where we put up Post-its across the room where people can add notes or share input. I wanna divide the learning up so that about every 10 minutes, something's changing, so that there's either a transition with a question I'm asking or a transition in the topic itself or a transition in movement, and so all those same things, Jen, that you and I believe are good teaching. Think back to your observations of great teachers and your own teaching experience. Bring those into those same settings with your staff because not only is it an opportunity to cover whatever the important PD objectives are, but it's also an important opportunity to revisit and remodel the practices of good teaching. And so, I I didn't do this enough when I was a principal, and as I started doing PD, with other groups, I started realizing how much I needed to bring back to my own PD, like playing peppy music as people are coming in and just setting a good vibe for what's going to be happening. If it's a time of day when people are just waking up, making sure there's coffee or pastries or something there that they can snack on or eat. And so I know those are just some really like those are nitty gritties, Jen, but those are important parts for me of learning too.
Okay, and I have one more.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a lecture. So I'm shaking my finger at every principal. Listen to me. People are going to be unhappy. Some people are going to be happy, but there are always going to be unhappy people.
Mhm.
I have a friend, colleague. I coached her for a while, and now I would consider her a friend. And she works in Chicago, and she called me and told me that she had planned an incredible PD. She had a couple of really strong speakers. She had choice. She had transitions. She had the gallery walk. She had the
Mhm.
music. She had the donuts. And she said, I knew, I knew what the feedback was going to be. It was going to say, well, it's okay, but I just want to go to my room and teach. So then she opened up the feedback because there had been a feedback Google form or whatever. And guess what it said? Well, this was great, but I really wanted to be in my room too. Then she was really upset. And I said, but you knew they were going to say that. You knew it. And she said, I know, but I just have that hope where I would open it up and they would say, this was amazing. This is so great. Thank you so much for the time you put into it. And I said to her, this is never going to happen. Please don't let this be some sort of a self evaluation because the truth is, you're never going to make everybody happy. You're just not. So
Mm.
know that, believe it in your core, And please know that it's not some sort of an evaluation. You're not a lousy principal because someone says, "Well, I'd rather be in my room working."
It's not any different than the classroom, Jen.
Right.
You show up every day determined to engage as many student learners as you possibly can, already knowing in advance that some are gonna be checking out, some are gonna be
Right.
tolerating you, some are gonna be politely bored, and others will be engaged, and you do your best to try to reach them where they are.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think there's an important emotional dynamic too when it comes to whether it's teaching kids or adults, which is whatever the attitude you bring to the meeting or whatever response you're giving me in the moment, I'm still gonna assume the best about you. I'm gonna assume at the end of the day you care deeply about kids. I'm gonna
Mhm.
assume you care deeply about your craft. I'm gonna assume you wanna be a learner. I'm gonna assume nobody gets out of bed in the morning and wants to suck. And
Right.
so just come in with that attitude too that, that we're all human and we're all gonna come with our own attitudes and agendas, but then make the best of it because that's what
Right.
great teachers do. And when you make the best of it and you enjoy it and you try to provide something you would enjoy doing too, then the majority of the people are gonna benefit from it, even with those few that are gonna voice whatever, you know, grumbles that they
Right.
bring. Well, Jen, this
That's
is
right.
such a great conversation. Thank you because, I this is so practical, and the question you ask was, "How can principals reconcile these 2 perspectives?" Which is, we need to continue learning. I just wanna be in my room and close my door and teach, and I believe both those things can be true at the same time. And you can acknowledge the need for us to want to get things done. Most principals I know still try to carve in a little bit of that time to just get in your room and get things done too. It's never perfect, but it's certainly much better when you're intentional, when you're collaborative, and when you design with the idea of what do I want to receive if I'm on the other side of this too.
That's right. That's right. I'm glad you said that. These two things can be true. They feel like opposites and they are not at all. They're just human nature and what it is to be an educator. You can need to learn things. You can even enjoy learning things. And you can also want to be sitting on the couch watching a movie. It's okay.
Well, Principal Matters listeners, I know you are if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you're a learner and you care deeply about your own growth. So thank you for the opportunity to learn together with you today. Jen, how can leaders stay connected with you and your resources?
Yes, absolutely. Check out my website, jenschwanke.com, and there you can subscribe to my newsletter, which is Principal Problems with Dr. Jen, and a weekly look into some of the things that principals face. So just subscribe there, and
And
you will.
yeah, and you can find all of the resources for this podcast and other services that we provide at Principal Matters at my website at williamdparker.com. And Jen, I'll just give a quick shout out too. It's toward this is coming out mid January and we're already looking at toward the end of the month. I hate to say this, but this is just true. January is when I start planning out all of my PD for the coming
Mhm.
year, 26, 27. So just want to invite you if you're already thinking about your PD for teachers for the spring, the summer, next fall, this time next year, and if it would be helpful for you to have someone who could bring something that would be encouraging or helpful or inspiring, whether that's content from my books or Jen's books, or if you would love for either of us to recommend people that we have learned from to reach out, because Jen and I would love to talk to you about the opportunities that we've had to teach and learn together, or just to collaborate with you. You can always reach me at will@williamdparker.com, or you can reach Jen at jenschwanke.com.
You got it.
So have a great day. Thanks for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.